This is the Gerry Ryan Show
on 2FM.
Call 1850 715 922.
In late 2006, Michael Flatley was rushed to a London hospital after being struck down with a mystery virus. He was admitted on the eve of the European tour of his show Celtic Tiger, and sold-out dates across the continent had to be cancelled as a result. Despite a battery of tests and scans, baffled doctors could not identify the problem. The symptoms ranged from acute lethargy to joint and muscular pain, and they failed to clear up despite months of rest. You can imagine what that meant to somebody like Flatley, who was used to being basically the equivalent of a wound-up spring released every few seconds of his life. It was a nightmare. He then met, though, Michael Doherty, a healer from Clare, who works with the body's bioenergy. The dancer literally attributes his astonishing recovery to this meeting and is now training and dancing properly for the first time in 3 years. The Energy Healers Clinic in Ennis has been a huge success since his appearance, which some of you may remember from the Late Late Show in 1990. And in case you don't remember, take a listen to this.
Now, listen to me, ladies and gentlemen. Over the past couple of months, people in areas around Cork, Limerick, Clare and Mayo have been contacting the Late Late Show office to tell us about the wonderful achievements of some healers who they've been helped by. And we got these reports from all over the place, and we checked out on them. And they were talking about bioenergy therapists who are organising clinics throughout the west of Ireland. And this past week, they've had a clinic in Gerry's Hotel just down the road. And we asked several people who were ill to go along and have a little treatment. And most of them were extremely impressed by what they found. Now, many of them had their ailments cured. Let me be clear about this. Others felt nothing at all, and some felt worse. But everybody was intrigued and impressed by the method of diagnosis and the treatment which they saw.
There you go. God, it hardly seems like that was 1990. Michael O'Doherty, good morning and welcome.
Good morning to you, Gerry. Thank you.
Now, of course, that was a very significant moment in your life.
Yeah, you know, we often talk about it. When you think of the present economic situation, how important Gay Byrne was at that time and the amount of employment he created in this country. And indeed, it's our first opportunity to thank him at that stage for what he did for us. But yeah, it's 1990, Gerry. It's 18, 19 years ago now. And it's just like yesterday. And it's been rolling ever since, thanks to Gay.
Now, in fact, I was with Gay last night. He was, myself and H went along to Pat Short, as I said earlier on, and I can report that Mr. Byrne is in great form and looking forward to getting into even better form.
Excellent.
Now, you're linked inextricably, for better or for worse, with Michael Flatley. Mm-hmm. Now, I have known Michael for many, many years. We first met when working on Riverdance together, and Michael has been and is, once again, maybe the most energetic person I have ever met. He is unstoppable in terms of physical energy and emotional energy. This guy, I mean, he's got Olympic standards that he sets himself, and mostly he actually achieves them. Yeah. So when he came to the point when he was about to go on that tour, and all the preparations have been made, and you know, these big shows that Michael puts on are very expensive things. You know, they're the dancing equivalent of a U2 tour. They're very expensive. A lot of people's livelihoods depend on them. There's huge expectation from the fans. And indeed, he usually has built himself up into an almost frenzy in preparation to get ready for it. Suddenly, bingo, he's hit by this illness. Mm-hmm. And he has to face the tabloid media, some of whom suspect he just fancies a bit of a kip for a while. And I can tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. He's not a man for a kip. And all that medical science could do basically amounted to nothing. Medical science that was available to him at that time. Then he met you. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, there's patient confidentiality involved here, and I don't know how much Michael has said you can speak about. But you had a dramatic effect on him.
Yes, and I suppose, Gerry, you see, what it reflects too is in a lot of cases that we see in our clinics. You know, you take Michael's situation, who pushed himself throughout his life, you know, set standards for himself, was an achiever, you know, gave a huge amount. The energy he gave in his shows was absolutely phenomenal. And when you give out that type of energy, it has to have a physiological effect. And over the years, because many years ago I lectured the ME organisation, and, you know, I worked with trying to understand what chronic fatigue was all about. And because we saw a lot of this this in the clinics. And in my opinion, what Michael suffered from, what is classically called adrenal burnout, that when you're putting yourself under so much stress all of the time, your adrenal function is affected. It's going to secrete cortisol into the body. The hypothalamus is going to secrete neurohormones into the body. Your digestive system is going to slow down. Your muscles are going to tighten. Your skeletal structure is going to misalign. Your cranial bones will tighten. The cerebrospinal fluid won't flow properly. There's a catapult effect associated. And when you're pushing against the grain all of the time, what's going to happen is that eventually one day your body's going to say, well, Michael, or any other Michael, your body has to shut down, because if it doesn't shut down, you're going to get a heart attack and you're going to die. And that's something we see in our clinics all the time. People coming in who are at this point where their body is ready to shut down, and some people are lucky. And I suppose, just as I said, just like in Michael's case, in reality, what Michael was suffering from was, in my opinion, adrenal burnout, Gerry.
Now, what does that do? It means that, well, you can still get up and move around, but just about.
You do, but you see, one of the difficulties about it, Gerry, is that it produces neurohormones that are negative to the body, and in particular with the digestive system. It has a tendency to produce excess inflammatories, histamines, and so on. And eventually your whole body becomes inflamed. Tissue becomes inflamed. To a certain degree, your blood pressure may go up, or in actual fact go down. What we notice sometimes in the clinics with people who are burnout, that low blood pressure is indicative of that, and sometimes that happens, and dizziness and headaches, and and I suppose this is a kind of a common reaction that we see, and ultimately, to all intensive purposes, medically everything is fine. But the body isn't presenting that reality. The reality is there's something wrong. And it's often a multiple of symptoms. So what we have to try and do is, try to understand how these symptoms begin. And these symptoms begin when you have this turbulent or hurried frequency in your system, where you're going all the time, and you're pushing yourself. Eventually, as you said, a spring, something has to snap. And, it's the body's safe mechanism of shutting it down and putting you on your back.
Now, it really is a brick wall, because in the case of Michael Flatley, Flatley now was absolutely determined at this moment that he was going on tour. He gives 110% when he's performing. Mm-hmm. But he could no more have gotten up on stage. He couldn't even have gotten to the airport.
Yes.
And gotten to the venue.
Yes.
He could no more have done that than I could have piloted Apollo 11 to the moon. He just could not do it. That's how powerful the effect is.
Oh, it is. And I mean, we see it a lot, we see it a lot, Gerry. And it's a big problem out there, that people find themselves in this situation, and even in every week in our clinic, we will have business people, that they are ringing, they have no energy, they're chronically fatigued, can't get out of bed in the morning, all of these types of things.
And I presume depression becomes an issue then as well.
Absolutely, because what you can imagine, over a period of time, you're going through kind of what's called a hypoglycemic state, where you're fluctuating above the normal balance line, so then you're stimulating, because you're taking stimulants like coffee, sweets, drugs, alcohol, whatever, and to a certain degree that's giving you the shift upwards. But then when you come down below the baseline, so you're fluctuating up and down from anxiety, depression, the need for stimulants, the need to go. So, and often we see this in kids, that's often classed as ADD and ADHD and all that kind of stuff. It's just basically the whole makeup of the human being, Gerry, is just broken down. And the great thing about it is that science has established this, that the primary cause of any of these types of symptoms is a breakdown within the electrical frequency within the cell. And what happens is that when we are pushing ourselves, that we're overloading the electrical frequencies of our cells, and the body physiologically is inheriting that, and they manifest in a symptom. And if we cannot identify clinically what the symptom is, then the patient is often left for many years just like that. And fortunately, if people keep working and keep searching like Michael did, because the searching he did, because he was already on the journey back to health when I met him. His creativity, his positivity, his focus, he wanted to get back up on the stage. He wanted to prove in this mental perception of life that he had that, things could be overcome, that he didn't need to be the way he was. And his journey led him to what I'm doing, and then eventually working with him with the energy. And it was easier to work with him because he was a very creative individual. And once we began to work with him, he began to connect to that level that we were talking about, to change that information, because there is no past and there is no future. Everything that you and I have experienced, Gerry, is vibrating as a frequency within every cell of our body right now. It's reflecting itself through the energy system or the energy field of our body. And if we can change that right here, right now, then that is the first step in then the body physiologically changing and manifesting in what we see as health.
Now, I'm going to employ naivete,
Absolutely.
but it's useful, I think. What do? Do you stick pins into me?
No.
Do you dance around? Do you rub my forehead? Do you apply tincture to my soup? What do you do?
No, basically, as I said, around the body we have an energy field. Now, the energy flows through us to keep us alive. And in 1979, the World Health Organization accepted the body had a composition of energy when it accepted acupuncture. So we know the anatomy of the energy system are called the meridians. The meridians are channels that run adjacent to the nervous system outside. So outside the body, you have this field of information. And you have also this energy flowing through the meridians. And Professor Nordenström in Sweden discovered that the body had what was called a biologically closed electrical circuitry system. Now, he equated this to the energy system, Gerry, of the body. And he said that if that illness begins at this level, so that from our perspective, what we have to do, we have developed techniques to manipulate the energy. So what we do, basically, a person stands in front of us, we wave our hands around the body in a system. Now, what we're doing is we're using our hands as an extension of our psyche, if you want to call it that. And we're feeling different parts of the body where the energy might be blocked, where there might be heat, if there's an accumulation of energy in a part of the body. We're feeling different things in the body. And that, over a period of the last 20 years, we've developed ways of understanding that. So around the body, you have the field, just like a radiator. You don't have to touch it to know if it's on. It's radiating heat. The body is emitting light, energy fields. And we feel that energy field, and we use techniques to check that out. And where we feel blockages or imbalances like heat or tingling or coolness, then we proceed with a series of techniques to try to balance that out. And effectively what we're doing is, in our consciousness, we are re-establishing the flow of energy through the body in a balanced way. And consciously we're aware that the intelligence implicit in that, just like if you cut your hair, it grows again, you cut your nails, they grow again, every 4 months every drop of blood in your body renews itself, every 5 days new lining of your stomach. So as your body is renewing itself, it's now renewing itself from this intelligence, this energy that's flowing through the body. And our job is to try to manipulate that, whether people are standing, whether people are sitting, whether people are lying. So it's literally waving the hands around the body. And then we have actual hands-on as well. If we have to stimulate a part of the body, if we have to energize an organ, if we have to stimulate the flow of blood in the body, there are specific techniques that we have developed. And the great thing is that people actually feel and sense what's going on. And, we often show parents how to work with their kids, and it's amazing the way they react as well.
Well, that begs the next question. But can anybody do this?
Absolutely, Gerry. This whole myth about Michael Doherty, Tom Griffin,
seventh son of a seventh son, the backside of a donkey.
Yeah, backside of a donkey. Absolutely, absolutely, Gerry. Absolutely, Gerry. Look, we have a situation in our society today where people need education to understand what's causing disease. And we see it primarily in children when parents come to us with it. If a mother comes to me, a month-old child suffering from colic, for example, what can I say to that child is going to make a difference? Absolutely nothing. But if I can get the energy flowing, then if I say to the mother, well, look, the reason this child has a colic is possibly because of the transfer of intestinal flora from you. That's led to bad bacteria in the child's gut, that's manifesting inflammation, can't process food, so now he has a huge amount of gases and waste building up. So what can you do? First of all, you can do tummy massage, just to relax the abdominal area and be aware of what you're doing. Repopulate the gut bacteria, work with the energies in a certain way, just like a mother would pick up a child and give it love and caring. And it's to understand that basic principle about where healing comes from, and that anybody can be taught to do this. So I'd like people thinking about, listen to this, that it's not just Michael O'Doherty here. Gerry Ryan can be taught to do this. Anybody can be taught to do this work, and that's the level of consciousness we need to bring people to. People are self-sufficient, because if like Michael and a lot of other people come to my clinic, Gerry, if they don't have the ability to heal, I can't do it. If it's not encoded in our system.
Are you saying, Michael, that there's a certain, the patient must deliver themselves. They must, if they're not going to be positive or optimistic, they must at least be open-minded.
Yes, but you know yourself.
I mean, I presume the cynic is a very difficult challenge.
You know what now?
Can you heal a cynic?
Can you know something? And I often tell the story. About 3 or 4 years ago, a gentleman came to our clinic, and we treated him for 2 days. He was crippled, this guy. He was stiff all over and whatever. And there was no, again, it was literally from arthritis, and he was pushing himself. And he came for the first 2 days because it's a 4-day treatment. And he rang the clinic, and he said to one of the therapists there, Mike, and he said, look, he says, I don't think this is going to work for me, because I'm feeling nothing. And the other therapist, Michael, at the time said to me, he was kind of concerned, because, that wasn't, the way we thought it would go. And So the following day he rang, on the third day, and he said, this was a complete skeptic, and he said, look, he says, whatever's happened is the best I've felt in 20 years. Now, I'm just relating a story. The point I'm making is...
It's a pretty good ad.
Yeah, but I know it is, and I'm saying, and I can substantiate this, with respect to anybody listening. But the thing is that, because for me, I don't want to create false hope. I want to explain to people what is science fact, that irrespective of what we think, our body is made up of energy. Irrespective of what anybody tells us, all we need to shift in our society is our perception of who we are and how we function. If we can change the perception of people, and often just working with the energy can do that, because it's real and it doesn't lie. And suddenly when people come to us and, if you're sensitive enough that you can feel what's going on, people will say, God, how did they know that? But this is the way we function, Gerry. It's reality, and it's what people have to contend with. And what illness is? What is illness? It's an attempt to draw our awareness to a part of our being we're ignoring. So what we have to try to do, I feel, is raise the level of consciousness in our society, to expose them fundamentally to how they function, to connect them and get them to work at that level. And that can be powerfully healing, just that alone, Gerry.
Can you tell, even without coming very close with your hands to somebody, can you tell by looking at somebody?
Obviously, you can look at people the way they stand. There's a certain, what we call, if you see people some people come to our clinics with mechanical problems, for example, and you look at the way they stand, you see the way they walk, to hold themselves, things like that, and the way they sit. So you can determine by their posture certain sort of misalignments to the spine, certain muscular sort of pressure in different area, and so on. And we can identify that very clearly, and we can deal with that. Then to work to check the energy system, then, Gerry, what we need to do, we need to be within close proximity to scan the field and feel whether.
What does it feel like?
I suppose if you were putting your hand like in front of a television, that when you knock it off and you feel it's kind of static, or in front of a computer, you feel it's kind of a little crackling or static type of thing. And sometimes it isn't just about the physical feeling, because the hands are sensors. They've sensors on them, and you can pick up information. But often it's the intuitive capability. People often maybe have thought about somebody and suddenly they ring. There's often that intuitive thing about it that, mother often knows a child is going to get ill before it ever gets ill. There's that intuitive thing that we have kind of disconnected from. And it's just really, I suppose, to heighten the sensitivity and our awareness about who we are and how we function.
I'm trying to think, this is essentially about impulse, about electrical impulse.
Absolutely,
essentially, this is what this is about. And if you think of our body as an incredibly complex machine that has, as part of its operation, not just the neurological impulses that are sent by our brain spontaneously and involuntarily and voluntarily, but also there is a sort of matrix around our brains, and indeed, I believe, around the entire body. And I think there is now scientific evidence of this, that is an incredibly complex latex of electrical impulses. And we know it's there because it can be calibrated, it can be measured now. So you're saying basically, not unlike you get televisions installed in your house, the two televisions downstairs are working fine. The one upstairs isn't. You bring in the fellas from the Smart House, good morning, Colin Gaffney, and they go, right, well, the reason, after a while, they discover that, well, the reason is because you've got this plug board with a whole load of high-tension cables here, and that's beside the coaxial cable that's going up or coming from their skybox, and there's interference going in there. So we'll just move that away from there, and hey presto, the picture clears up on the television upstairs. Is that what we're talking about?
And that's, in essence, is the same principle of how the body functions. I mean, Professor Valerie Hunt in UCLA, used equipment that was developed by NASA, the telemetry system, and that was developed to pick up information from the first space trips, the physiological reaction that the body would have. It was a radio frequency, and she discovered that the primary cause of any physiological disorder was a breakdown at that level. And you're spot on. It's a matter of frequency. If we look at disease as a frequency, If we look at disease as a chemical imbalance, then we're limiting it because
it is that, but not only that.
It is that, absolutely. So let's say we take the person who has a particular condition, goes to the doctor, gets the medication, and we fully endorse and we fully support that because we work with medical people and we see the role, Gerry, quite clearly. So the medical profession administer the medication. The medication has a specific role. The molecular constituent of the drug is to stimulate the molecular activity of the cell. But let's go beyond that now. Let's go deeper. If we can treat the symptom medically, if we can go to the cause by going into the subatomic level, going into that electrical frequency that you talk about, change that, and then empower the patient to deal with what's causing that, then together we can have a very powerful system that can enable the patient to recover, Gerry.
Can you spontaneously make these checks?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, maybe we'll do that. I'm going to volunteer outside and check after this break.
2FM. In 9 hours' time, the weekend could start and never, ever stop.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is an estimated €25 million. Have you played yet?
This time of year, there are 3 types of weather. It's going to get bad. It's already bad. And phew, that was bad. But on the bright side, it's the best time to enjoy Avonmore fresh soup. You get the freshest ingredients without the hassle of chopping and blending, so you'll feel better inside and forget what's happening outside. If only for the few minutes it takes to prepare and enjoy deliciously nutritious Avonmore fresh soup. Avonmore fresh soup. Slow food, fast.
Want to surf the internet but nervous of all the sharks ripping you off for broadband access? Broadband from 3 offers the best value around at just $19.99 a month all in, with no hidden extras lurking under the surface. To find out just how much you can save versus other providers, visit 3.ie/broadband. Surf for less and turf the rest with broadband from 3. Get more. Get 3.
Terms and conditions apply. See 3.ie, drop into any of our stores or call 1-800-943-999 today.
Welcome back. We've got Michael Doherty in studio. We're talking about bioenergy. Michael's the man who gave Flatley back the zing. And I've brought in my young producer. She is very young compared to me. And Sarah is standing in front of Michael, and he's now going to just check. What are you going to check for, Michael?
So basically what I'm doing is I'm just scanning or moving my hands through the body, Gerry, now like this, okay? To feel if there are any blockages of energy in Sarah's body. I don't want to frighten her or anything else like that now. So tell her it's very basic, okay? So what you're doing is you're looking to pick up specific information from the body and see where there are specific blockages.
Now, he's literally just standing beside her. He's waving in an almost conducting an orchestra-style fashion, his hands across her back, her head, her shoulders.
So, can I say what I'm picking up then in Sarah, okay?
Is that okay with you, Sarah?
Yeah, okay. You don't mind, no?
You look pretty healthy to me.
She looks pretty healthy, okay? Okay, just certainly a little bit of pressure on the chest area, but the spine area is where there is most pressure.
Oh.
Okay? Here, right here, she has a problem on the left sacroiliac joint, center thoracic area, and upper right side of her neck. I don't know what she has or not. I'm just saying this is what I'm feeling, but her spine is her problem. Okay?
Worth investigating.
Worth investigating.
Did it make any sense?
Could you feel anything there?
I could. My heart is racing.
Yeah.
And I could feel pulsing, definitely.
But does it make the diagnosis, does it make any sense to you in your
Not
back?
that I know of, but
now often that doesn't mean there's a disease there. It just means it can often be a postural thing. It doesn't necessarily mean disease, just because there's an energy imbalance. And then what we've got to try to do is shift the energy.
Nice. Very, very determinedly.
Feel it, like that.
Pushing his hands past her head now and fanning them out very slowly, as if he's almost kind of pulling some invisible thread away from her.
How does it feel?
You can feel something moving anyway.
It's a very simple shift, but it's often that shift.
I can feel pulsing here.
You can feel pulsing in your back.
Yeah.
Can you?
That's the area where I felt the energy was blocked. So
well done.
It will happen, because it's very real, Gerry. That Yeah, and often
Now you know you're definitely working on the Gerry Ryan show and
Yeah.
this kind of stuff has been
So
done.
you
to you.
need, she needs to get a rise. Jerry.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thanks.
Hope that was
She needs to get a rise, Jerry. No, not a cut.
Now, just talk us through what happened there.
So again, what you were explaining, waving the hands around the body to feel if there were any kind of blockages of energy.
But you weren't just waving them around.
No, but you're
What
feeling. Yeah, you're sensing. Your hands sometimes it's very difficult. You know, I suppose over the radio, visually it's it's easier because people can see the way you do. So it's like you're crisscrossing your hands in front of the body.
But to me, it looks like afterwards. It looked like you were. First of all, it looked like you were feeling for threads, invisible threads.
Yeah.
Then it looked like you'd found some, and then it looked like you were pulling the threads away.
That's it. You're releasing where you would feel a little blockage, like that little heavy static in an area. Then you would release that, and that's exactly what happens. You're taking away. You're releasing. It's like you're opening up that valve and allowing the energy to flow again. And as I said, sometimes it's difficult in words to explain this because it's non-physical, it's non-material. It's only from when you see it. But the great thing is that I suppose, like Sarah, that people do feel what's happening. It's very real to them, and they sense either a tingling or a heat or a coolness, or they sense different sensations because what you're moving is what's keeping us alive and what you're working with, and that is why, because it's so real, Gerry, we have taken the steps to be very responsible for the reaction that happens in patients because it is very real.
Has Michael recovered completely?
Yeah, I think that Michael is well. I mean, he's very well on the way. And I mean, like anybody else, that Gerry, because of the nature of your lifestyle, it's like any business people come into me and they're stressed out or they have no energy or whatever. What you do is, what I often say to people like Michael is this: let's sit down and write a job description.
Yeah.
What is your job description? Okay, so you elegantly put it together at the beginning of the show, and then you say, what are the hazards of that job? Okay, and we know the hazards. What are what steps then are you taking to counter those hazards? And what happens is people don't take steps. So for myself, for Michael and anybody else, what we have to find are ways of understanding the consequences of our work, the type of energy we extend and expend. So what Michael now has to do for the rest of his life is to...
Yes, I was going to ask, is there maintenance involved?
Absolutely,
here?
That's the key. Michael, he has he's a regime of fitness, as he said it himself on the paper, and he has he's getting his diet right. He's working with his own energy because he's very connected to this whole energy sort of philosophy. He's very creative, very connected to that, and had to be because of the shows that he created. So he's very connected to that already, Gerry. So the thing is, he'll be working with his energy on a continuous basis. He'll be working with his diet on a continuous basis. He'll be working like everybody else coming to the clinic. Once we get the energy flowing, once we initiate that process, then patients have got to take on board a program, taking time to relax, exercise. And this is the great thing. This is where the breakthrough is going to come from, Gerry, in medicine. The breakthrough in medicine, and I'm talking about medicine as in healing. The breakthrough in healing or whatever is going to come, not just necessarily because of a different laser or a different drug or whatever. It's going to come about by the simple ways. Looking at our diet, taking time to relax, looking at our exercise, and as we were saying earlier, changing our attitude, our perception of things. Those basic things that we do in our everyday life actually scientifically have been shown to influence our gene function over a short period of time. So it's amazing the complexity, as you said, the trillions of different reactions right now our body's going through. It's amazing the complexity of the body, but it's amazing the intelligence that the body has to recover if you work at the right level. And going back to your scenario that you were explaining a few moments ago about the televisions upstairs and downstairs, you can change all the buttons you like and you can put in new whatever you want to put into until somebody goes away and reroutes the system properly again.
You're going to still have the interference. And the interference gives you a bad picture, which is the equivalent of your bad health.
Absolutely.
Now, I presume there are moments, and I don't know how you deal with these, but I presume they happen, when you're conducting your analysis of somebody and you discover something very serious that's more than misalignment, more than a blockage. What do you do then? The
diagnosis that we make is an energetic diagnosis.
Yeah.
It's not a medical diagnosis.
But I presume if somebody had a tumour,
well,
you might sense that.
The thing about it is, because of my experience, Gerry, because of my experience and having worked with a lot of medical people, I look at a number of symptoms associated with the energy blockage. I always advise, and in our clinics we always advise people to have proper medical analysis. And if they come to us and haven't had that, we always advise, it's our policy
To go and get it.
Absolutely. It's essential. We're talking about time here. But if somebody presents to me with a symptom, they haven't gone to a doctor, presents with a symptom that's of a neurological nature, for example, that's manifesting in numbness or pain or tingling or, dizziness or whatever the case like that, there's always the red flag flying. And while we can still work with the energy, it's always
There
essential.
may be a physical, mechanical thing that conventional intervention deals with.
You have to work with that. And the thing was, Professor, going back briefly to Professor Nordenstam in Sweden, when he discovered the biologically closed electrical circuitry system, Gerry, he actually worked. He developed what was called electrochemical treatment in the treatment of cancers and found it to be very, very helpful. But going back to the question you're raising, when we feel energy, sometimes, yes, you can determine the intensity of the blockage. Now, I
presume you'll go, this is off the Richter scale here.
Absolutely. And I know of at least 3 cases that we would have found blockages of energy in somebody and suggested to have it checked out. And I wouldn't go as far as saying, well, it saved their life, but I would go as far as saying it prevented a lot of problems for the people down the road. And again, Gerry, I can substantiate what I'm saying. We're in the business 20 years. We have no intention putting out anything negative. We see the value in everything, but what is real is what we have to deal with. And with the 20 years experience and I sit down and I work with medical people and talk with them and train with them. And if there's any way, and tomorrow morning in my clinic, if I'm not happy with something I'm finding, I can pick up the phone and I can talk to one of the top oncologists in America. I can talk to a local GP. I can talk to a psychiatrist if it's necessary. From our perspective, in our clinic, the approach we take, Gerry, is an integrated approach. We want to provide for whatever works for a patient.
The scientists will tell us that verifiable is only conclusive when it's repeatable. You must be able to repeat the diagnosis,
yes,
and repeat the function that leads to the therapeutic effect. I presume that is something that you always hope for. Do you get it?
All the time. Absolutely all the time. And, what we find is that there are certain blockages of energy that lead to certain... What we can now do is, we'll say, relate to an emotional disturbance that would lead to physiological disorder. So let me explain this in a very simple way. Dr. Gascoigne, in the Manual for Conventional Medicine, outlines that if the spleen energy is imbalanced, this creates a gastrointestinal dysfunction. It creates an overproduction of mucus and damages bacteria. This leads to Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, different types of inflammatory bowel disorders. Eventually will pass into the organs, often causing bronchitis, sinus-type symptoms, and often excrete itself through the skin through eczema or asthma. Now, so we can treat all of the symptoms, whether it's steroid-based creams, whether it's inhalers, whether it's anti-inflammatories or steroids, the various conditions that I've outlined. That's fine, which helps, but now we need to go, why is the spleen energy compromised? So it led us to begin to understand, why would this happen? And we began to study with the Taoist system. And their perception of emotion was that the organs deal with emotions. They send a signal to the brain secretes a neurohormone and tries to deal with it. Eventually, if we don't transform the emotion, eventually we end up having to take medication. It can no longer secrete the serotonin, melatonin, whatever we need. Now, we know now the spleen deals with worry. So if you worry, it affects the spleen. If it affects the spleen energy, it affects the digestive system. If the digestive system is compromised, it causes these diseases. So we're seeing a relationship. Okay, if you take people who we know grief, for example, if we take people who suffer grief, we know it affects the lungs. So the organs are our ways of dealing with our emotions. Fear is stored in the kidneys, anger is stored in the liver. Now people might say, "Oh God, how is that possible?"
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying that's bullshit.
That's bullshit, exactly. But the thing is, if you're nervous, you're running to the loo all the time because of its association with the bladder. So, the thing is that we have to understand is that our organs, our cells have neuropeptides. They have the ability to feel and think. So let's not think that there are pieces of meat in there sitting down and everything is okay. They're listening because, where your consciousness goes, your energy flows. Our body is eavesdropping all of the time on everything we're feeling and thinking. And we must be aware of that. So our thoughts create our physiology. So if they do create our physiology, which is a medical and scientific fact, then we have to be aware. It's not just our brain. Our emotions have to store somewhere. And the emotions, because if we take a cell out of our body and we dissect and analyze it, what do we find? Galaxies, planets and universes. We find that every cell has an emotional, mental, physical, spiritual and psychic dimension. If we take a cell of our big toe, we can clone an individual or clone somebody. So it has to contain that information. Not just the cells of our brain, not just the cells of our organs, but every cell of our body contains the capacity. Okay, and what has been found from the scientific community, Gerry, that if we can work at this perception of life, work with this energy system, that it has the capacity to initiate structuring and functioning of the body. So when an organ becomes diseased, let's say like liver cancer or lung cancer or whatever, like what's going on? I mean, it's a live living organism. It's living. It's alive. How can we influence where that's being fed from? We've got to change. I believe, and I was saying to you off air, Gerry, I believe that the time will come that if we could just change our perception of what the disease is, that the time will come with medicine, with bioenergy therapy, with diet and all of this kind of stuff, that we will eventually be able to live with these types of problems, and eventually we will find a way that, in an integrated way, to overcome the problems.
How do your conventional medical colleagues react to what you're doing? Because I presume people are sometimes referred to you. You're referring people back to the GPs, to other disciplines within conventional medical science. I think I'm beginning to come to the view now that there is no such thing as alternative medicine. It's just all medicine. It's whatever works.
Yeah, and I mean, in February in the US, the Institute of Medicine and the National Academy of Sciences are actually hosting it's a big organisation in the States, and they're bringing together the whole idea of complementary and orthodox medicine. Now, the time has come to move beyond what complementary is saying against medical science is saying. The difficulty, and I resonate with the difficulty that medical science has had over the last number of years in often looking at people saying, I can cure this and I can cure that and I can cure the other, and stay away from your doctor. That is not the approach we take. We have to be professional. We train therapists, Gerry. They abide by Code of Professional Conduct similarly in line to the medical code. They uphold and they're covered with professional negligence insurance. We take it very serious. And the thing about it is this, that going back to your question, often it isn't the ordinary GP out there, that has any problem with us. Often it's down to the Institute of Medicine itself. It sometimes fails to realise that, there is much more. We are a much more complex being than just chemicals, Gerry. And that what we're saying, and what my wish is, and my hope is that we follow what they're doing in America, and indeed in the UK, because about 10 years ago, I attended a meeting. I was requested by Dr. Michelle Langdon to attend a meeting in the House of Commons. It was a white paper published by the government there with a view of integrating complementary and orthodox medicine that was chaired by Laura Baldwin and David Tugenic. And they, at that stage, and we have people working in hospitals in the UK, and at that stage they wanted to do it. And I would say to the Irish government, in the present economic climate, that the consequences of all of the negativity that we're hearing out there is more sickness. What we need to do is educate our society to be more positive, to have a greater vision, greater focus in life. And if we can do that, then we can have a huge influence in the cost of the exchequer.
Well, I have found it a very positive experience having you with us this morning. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know that you and other eminent speakers in the field of bioenergy are hosting a Plexus self-help seminar in the Hilton Hotel, Kilmainham in Dublin. The event takes place tomorrow.
Gerry,
from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is a cost. It's €95 in. You can call 065 684 1844. That's 065 684 1844. Or you could email plexushealing@aircom.net to find out if there's a place left there for you. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gerry. I really appreciate your time.
You may be getting a call.
2FM. Tickets are now